Welcome to Beyond the Work, Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. My name is Chris Caramanica. As a 15-plus year veteran in the apartment industry, I have stories to tell, a desire to hear and tell others' stories. As a multiple committee member for NAA, a CAMT advisory board member and a CAMT holder, and a national presenter and educator, I have met and worked with so many great people in our industry at all different levels. This is not going to be a how-to podcast. This is going to be a how did podcast. We are going to explore the how did tales in multifamily maintenance. How did we do it? How did we learn from it? How did we grow? How did we decide not to do it again? Join me as we go beyond the work.
BTW, when is a vacant ready? My name is Chris Caramanica, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Beyond the Work Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. My guest today is Ronald Harrington, training manager for the 29th Street communities. Ronald is also host with Rooms with Ronald here on the Multifamily Media Network. Ronald is an award-winning multifamily leader, national speaker, innovator, influencer, servant leader, and forward thinker. Ronald and I have a great conversation with everything regarding apartment readiness, and we talk about his experiences of completing over 100 property tours in the last year. So join me and Ronald as we go Beyond the Work. Ronald Harrington, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Work Tales in Multifamily Maintenance.
Thank you for having me, Chris. This is so exciting that you actually want to talk to someone from the office side of things about maintenance.
Well, I guess maybe you've heard some of my podcasts before. There is I don't want to say contentious relationship, but there is a divide between leasing and property management professionals and their maintenance teams. And I've been a follower of yours for a long time. We've worked together and been around multiple NAA committees together and things like that. So for my audience, let's start with a quick intro for my audience who might not know who Ronald Harrington is.
Yeah, so I am pretty well known in the leasing world. I did this crazy thing in 2023 where I decided I wanted to shop at the time 100 properties. The company I was working for was doing a new department. We were becoming experience specialists versus kind of the sales training. And I was like, well, let's go see what the experience is like across kind of the gamut of the country, because at the time I traveled every week. And so I literally told my boss in January, my 2023 goal was to shop 100 apartment communities. And I was really, Chris, waiting for it to be you're crazy. That's not going to work. Let's not do that. And it came back to, let's go do it. You have the go ahead. And so I kind of drug my feet for a little bit because I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. They're going to realize that this is a really bad idea, right? And so March comes around and she was like, so how are you on your 100 shops? Our owner is asking how it's going because I brought it up to him. And I was just like, I haven't started yet. And she was like, I was expecting you to be 75% of the way done because I just know you. And I was like, I kept waiting for you to tell me no. And she's like, I almost told you we need to do 365, one for every day. And I was like, I'm so glad you did it because that was just a lot of properties to shop. So I ended up actually shopping 101, 28 different cities and 13 different states. I tried to get to 14. We went on a cruise. Me and my husband went on a cruise to Alaska. And when we were in the Alaska towns, I said, I really want to go shop properties, but I got shot down real quickly.
That wasn't an excursion on the cruise, was to shop an apartment community that you could sign up for?
No, it was not. And I even tried to spin it as we could do it as a business write-off. Part of this cruise could be a business write-off now because I'm using this for work. But he politely declined.
That is amazing. I have shopped some, communities in my younger days in the industry as a maintenance supervisor. I can't imagine the undertaking and the things that you saw. So, this is a maintenance theme podcast, but it's really for everybody. And what are some of the overarching themes that you saw, especially when it came to, let's start with curb appeal first. I think that's a big hot button. What were some of the overall themes that you saw with the curb appeal of these 101 different communities that you saw?
It was so funny to kind of see how the curb appeal varied from side to side. It became overall, they weren't bad. I didn't have any that I was just shut like down the whole thing. And as you can hear, my dog is very excited about Curb Appeal too, because he knows responsible pet owners pick up after their animals. But I did see a lot of that. I saw a lot of poop and like, dog waste all over the stuff, things like that. So there was that. I did not see any like horrible landscaping. I saw some questionable ones that I'm like, you need to pick up the weeds and like you need to do those kinds of things. There were some student properties that I shopped on a Monday, first thing Monday morning, and you can imagine maintenance not being there on site. We had lots of trash, and I'm like, oh, we just had a whole party. But I mean, the curb appeal overall made me like, I was like, okay, we're heading in the right direction. We're not quite there yet, but the major things that we used to see have cleared up.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm always looking at through my lens when I'm looking at curb appeals. I'm looking for the cleanliness like you're talking about, because I think that's, the easiest and most obvious to prospective renters. But I'm actually looking for safety things too. I'm actually looking at sidewalks being level, no broken sprinkler heads, all the lights are working, things like that. So it's interesting to hear what the different lenses are that we all look. And that's usually why when I do site visits, I try to bring somebody from the operation side, whether that's a regional or a vice president. We're looking at it and we're getting on the same page. Did you get a sense that was something that was happening on a lot of these tours, or?
No, I did not. And it's so funny that you bring people. So what I used to do when I was a manager was every week we did daily huddles, but one huddle a week, it was a random day. So on Monday, I would appoint somebody as, one day this week, you're going to be the manager of the property walk. And we're all going to like spend our morning huddle. We're going to go into a property. And so like I would spend a couple weeks doing it because I wanted them to see what I saw and what I looked for. And then, so you would find out on Monday which week you were going to be, that like manager. And what the goal was is you didn't know what day. You just knew that there was going to be a day where you were going to lead the property walk and you were going to point out things that you saw. Because you're right, everyone's eye is different. And it was so funny because the amount of work that the people all of a sudden would go out and pick up trash and everything, they would be bringing these things when they were the manager because they didn't want to be like the one that had to like point out all the bad stuff. So they wanted to go fix. So it was probably like one of the best things I ever did. And I even did it when I would walk my vacants and like apartments because I wanted to train their eye to be a manager's eye. But I also was curious to see what things that I'm not seeing because I do have, my little bifocals on, like I'm in the zone, like just driving my tunnel vision. So, but on these tours, there was a lot of disconnect. And I felt an overarching theme that people didn't really like from the leasing side care about their property. We would walk through and there would be trash on the ground. And they would just walk by and like pick up the trash. Or my favorite is when we would walk into an apartment and there would be dead bugs in the apartment because they didn't walk it in. They would kick it. And I remember one in like, I was in Austin. I went to this property. I saw the bug as soon as we walked in. So instead of going to the bedroom, I went into the kitchen first, thinking that this is the leasing professional's chance to see the bug and to do something with it. And the professional did not. I then had to step over the bug. And when I was in the bedroom, I heard the shoe kick the bug across the room. And I was just like, I already saw it at that point. So you probably should have just left it versus like, had it been me, I would have probably like found a way to like pick it up. I used to always carry like a baggie in my pocket or like a Kleenex or something to like pick it up. And I would just acknowledge it. I mean, it was like August in Texas when, I'd been like, man, it's 100 degrees outside. No wonder this little fella came in here thinking it was going to be cool. And that was the demise of him was coming inside. And I would just acknowledge it, made a joke and like move on about it.
Yeah. And for those that might not be familiar, when you're doing a shop, Ronald, you're really looking at not just the physical asset, but you're more focused on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're more focused on the leasing professional's presentation, their follow-up, how they're talking about the property or the unit, how they're selling the property, whether that's the amenities or the resident base or events that they're having. But there's a whole nother piece that I'm sure that you have a keen eye to when it comes to the roaches is really the maintenance and upkeep of these units.
Yeah.
Because really you should be seeing any renter, especially in a shopping scenario, any prospect should be looking at a unit like they could move into today. That if they were to sign a lease, they could have a key today, bring their U-Haul, which I'm sure we've all had people outside with the U-Haul signing leases. What is before I get on my soapbox, which I will shortly, what are some of the things that you've seen about the general maintenance of Vacant's, the 101 tours that you did? I can only imagine you weren't seeing one apartment per tour. It was probably multiple.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that can you think of that maybe stood out for you when the unit wasn't ready? And we're going to get back to that word because I think it's an important word when we're talking about units. But what stood out for you about units not being ready?
Yeah. So actually, you're right. I was kind of on the overall experience. And to me, that included, did I see an apartment, a vacant apartment, or did I see a model? Because I'm really was really keen on the two, because personally, I'm a firm believer that I can sell a vacant apartment a lot quicker than a model. Because I always get tired of, well, yes, this is the model. You've put all the bells and whistles in here, but is this what my apartment's going to actually look like? But then I also tracked, did I see an apartment that was made ready or not made ready? And more often than not, I actually saw an apartment that was not made ready. But the leasing professional tried to spin it in a way that they knew that they should not be doing that. Literally, it became this, well, it's not ready just yet, but I want you to see it. And I'm like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. We talk about this make ready, and there's this one property that stood out to me, and it was in San Diego, in downtown San Diego. And I went to walk it, and I had to wait for the leasing professional because she was on lunch. She was late. The manager couldn't tour me. So the tone had already been kind of not great. And she shows me this, where we go to the third apartment, and she says, when I was in here yesterday, they were working on it. So if people are still in here, we're going to pretend that they're not in here. So they set the stage. I was like, well, this is going to be good, right? So the story, because they're also asking $3,500 for this one bedroom. So if I'm paying $3,500 for this one bedroom, I want to see it in pristine condition. We opened up the door, and there is the janitor's cart in the middle of the living room. So then I'm like, okay, well, so I'm walking through, there's painter's tape on all the doors. And then I walk into the bathroom, and on the bathroom floor are what appear to be puppy pads and diapers. Underneath.
Okay, that's new.
Underneath, I was just you've already shown this. How did you not catch this? But the correlation is she just stood in the kitchen and let me walk around. So she never looked at it. So we talk about make ready. That apartment should have never been shown, because I still actually have photos on my phone of this apartment with the puppy pad and the diapers in there, because I was just like you said, this is new to me, So
yeah.
I saw appliances that weren't there. It looked like they robbed Peter to pay Paul, very common in our industry. Cleanliness, light switches kind of off. I'm OCD. So when I'm looking at an apartment, my maintenance team used to hate me. I go into every room and I look at the screws and the light plates, because they all have to be going the same direction. And it's that minor detail, to the eye, my maintenance team, Ronald, there is that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm actually, it's a psychological thing, because when you see that all the screws are going horizontal across the room, it gives an appearance that you pay attention to detail. So it makes you feel more confident that the apartment is actually probably cleaner than it really is, because you took the time to make sure all the screws went out. So not a lot of places did that, but there was a couple. So I'm sure my maintenance team is glad I don't work on site anymore.
I want to get back to psychological, because I think that's really important. But before we go down that road, some of the least I have turned personally and inspected personally hundreds, if not thousands of units at this point in my career. And my least two favorite words in the multifamily industry when I'm talking to a maintenance supervisor or a leasing professional are ready but. And you just said it, right? That leasing professional looked at you and said, it's ready, but because for me, those are opposite words in our industry. It's either ready or it's not ready. There's no ready, but. And a lot of times what comes after the but is we haven't cleaned it. We haven't finished painting it. We're just waiting on an appliance. That's not ready. And, that's the thing for me that always frustrates me when I walk units is that ready, and they'll mark it ready on their make ready board, or, they'll show it. And I've done I have not done 101 units in a single year. And in your case, 10 months. So from earlier in your story, yeah. But when I was in New York City, I was in a market rate environment, and I love to shop, and I wasn't looking at the things that you were looking at, right? I was, hey, listen, I offered to my community manager, hey, I'm going to go down and I'm going to go shop this property. And I really wanted to see what kind of product was being delivered as opposed to the experience. And you were looking at both, but your story of the $3,500 a month apartment, I trumped that by going into a New York City 20-story, 2-bedroom apartment that was almost $8,000. And I wore my, Sunday best. Obviously I wasn't wearing anything that showed where I worked. And I went to go lease this apartment, and the leasing professional walks me in, much like your story, just lets me walk around. And I saw a shower head missing. I saw a wad of blue tape in the sink. The toilet had rings. The blinds were all uneven. And for me, that's, if I was not going to be renting, if I had a $8,000 check ready to sign, I wasn't going to be doing that. But that brings me back to what we were just talking about with this, was the psychological. Yes, I hear you with the OCD. I have a similar affliction, and I see it all the time online on Facebook groups and maintenance Facebook groups about that level and attention to detail. Talk to me and the audience a little bit about what some of the psychological things are when a unit isn't ready, how it could make or break a sale or turn a resident off to either that community or even that company. You go to one property and go be like, I'm never going to rent at any of their, sites.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like that first impression, right? And so had I rented that apartment in San Diego, to me, that's all I would ever think about was here in this spot, because that was the first image that I saw. And so, then you start adding, so then you're like, if they're showing this to me in this level of detail they don't care about, what happens when I move in? What happens when I move in, right? Okay, so they even got my money and this is what they're showing me. So now I already feel a certain way about they're not really going to take care of me. They think that they're doing me a favor by showing me this unit that's available and it's going to fit my needs. But you're actually
wink, wink. I'm not supposed to do this.
Right.
I'm doing this for you, my special client.
Right. But I've also done that for 500 other people today. So it kind of sets that thing. I went to a new lease up, and actually the very first apartment community that I shopped during this project was a brand new lease up in Charlotte. She told me they were 10% occupied. So we could have saw, at this point, 100, 200 units. And we went into one, and in the middle of the living room was the stackable washer and dryer. They were working on this brand new, never been lived in apartment stackable washer and dryer. I knew right then and there, even if I was going to lease, I wouldn't lease at that community because no one's used it, no one's lived in it, and this is already broken. What else is going to break in this moment? And I get it, things break, right? Probably not the best prospect when you're trying to lease up, right? You could have picked the next door unit or the one above it or the one below it, but you chose the one, which showed me that as a leasing professional, you didn't walk the units you were going to show today. You just said, oh, here's one on my list. It happens to be on this floor. It's a different floor plan. Let me go walk in, which it goes back to how are you going to, then I said to myself, well, how would they handle my personal information? So those little key indicators, by what you think you're doing, making someone feel special, you're actually putting doubt into their minds of, okay, so where else is there going to be this make me feel special? But you probably shouldn't show that behind, like, it's kind of like, Oz, right? Everyone has this picture of Oz and you don't ever look behind the curtain. That's what you're kind of doing when you're showing prospects apartments that aren't made ready.
When you are doing that, that is always, if they do rent, if you are able to close the deal, that's always going to be in the back of their head, right? Using your bug example, they might go 6-8 months with never having a pest control issue. But when they do, the first thing they're going to be is like, it's always been like this because it was like this when I toured. And same thing with appliances or work orders immediately after a
Well, that's going to say that's what they're going to do, right? Not only if it has it 6 or 8 months, someone like me, right? I saw that bug. So guess what I'm probably going to do every other week? I'm going to put in, because I'm paying for pest control. We do that, right? We so I can get preventative pest control. So every other week, once a month, I'm going to be in the pest control book, even if I don't have issues, because in my mind, this apartment has problems with bugs. If the appliance is broken, if the washer and the stackable is broken in the living room and I move in, I hear a noise that doesn't sound right. I'm going to say, well, it was broken when I moved in. Let me put the work order in. So actually,
I want it new.
And I want it new, and like all these other things, right? So what the leasing professional is really doing is actually creating more work for the on-site maintenance professionals, because now we have this image in our mind thinking, okay, now I know that they painted the unit. So now I'm going to scrutinize the paint job because I was in here when they were painting it. So, this shade is off or this shadow isn't here. So you need to come repaint it because I know you painted it. You didn't do it right. So now that move-in checklist, that in a perfect world, if both parties done their job right, if maintenance has turned it and the office staff has walked it and said, yes, this is good to go, when you get your move-in condition form back from your new resident, there shouldn't be anything on it. There should be no surprises. And there is nothing worse than hearing a leasing professional say, we moved you in, maintenance is going to come back and fix this. We just wanted to get you in. And I'm like, no, you moved the move-in date, you pull all of your resources together to get the problem fixed, because the goal is to have that move-in sheet signed off on, good to go. There's no issues, nothing like that maintenance is going to have to go fix.
I wish I could shout what you just said from the rooftops, Ron. And, I'm very excited that you're on today. So hopefully a lot of people can hear that. Is whether you're on the maintenance or the leasing side of our industry, there is a lot of after effects of not having a unit ready, not being 100%. And there's financial implications, there's customer service implications, there's reputation management issues, because if somebody moves into a unit that's not ready, then they might put a review, out into the world through any number of sources. I know when I get a bad delivery from Amazon, let's use the big box, I might put a review like, this came damaged. This, and that's what we're delivering in some cases to the people who are paying us, and we expect to live with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for hopefully more than a year. But
hey, and then you also have, I call them loose lips leasing agents that will tell you all of the issues. So then you kind of get into legal ramifications, right? Because you tell somebody that the building is old and the patios are rotting and they're pulling away from the building, so they're going to be replacing all the patios. So now that's a safety issue in my mind. And if we don't teach our teams to kind of handle that, I can't tell you one time, not on my 101 shots, but in my career, I've toured a property and the leasing professional told me that apartment had just went through mold remediation. That apartment. And so, whether or not it was microbacteria, or if it really, whatever, right? You don't say those things. And I think just as much as educating, the maintenance on sales, we also maintenance needs to educate the leasing staff on, here's what we don't say. We don't say that the building has termites or that it's a roach infestation next door. All of those things that I know they sound like common sense, but people will do whatever they need to do to get it sell, whether or not it's the right way or the wrong way.
So you bring up a, interesting, I'm sitting here listening to you talk and thinking about those 101 shops that you've done. A law of averages tells me that a leasing professional did not escort you to every single one of those apartments. A law of averages, in my own personal experience, I can almost guarantee that at least one time, and I know it's probably many more, one of two things happened. So I want to talk about them individually. One of two things happened. You were handed the keys and said, go up to apartment 503. Here's the key. We'll be waiting for you. That's scenario one. So we're going to cover that one first. And scenario two is Jimmy's going to take you to the apartment. My maintenance technician is going to take you to the apartment. He's got the master key, or the keys, and he's going to tour you. So let's talk about the throwing the keys across.
Can I give you scenario 3?
Please. I would love a scenario 3. To tease our audience, because we're going to cover all 3 of them.
You go into the leasing office, you meet with the leasing professional, they give you the list of apartments, and then they say, this is the elevator, and all those apartments are unlocked for you to go and look. And that was a property in New York City that happened to me. If you could get past concierge into the elevator, or you could follow someone in, you had access to that. So that's scenario 3 that we should talk about as well. But let's go back to scenario 1.
And I want to, I think I have some thoughts on scenario 3, which unfortunately we're going to see a lot more of. But let's go back to scenario 1. Mr. Harrington, thank you for joining us today. Just fill out this gift card, this guest card with all of your information, and here are the keys. What is your experience like with that? I've had it happen to me. And I know it's happened to you. What did you see? What did you not see?
And so it was a little bit of a difference, because I toured some places like that. They were more of the self-guided, but you checked in. And so you didn't have the physical key. You had a digital key, and you had locks. But I did have a property once hand me a key and say, here's the 3 units. This key will work for all 3 units. So my initial thought was, is this a master key, or the vacant key? We have that, right? But you set yourself up in that way, because if there's an issue, you don't know about it, first off, right? You walk down, I walked down a hallway, and it looked like someone punched the wall. I'm sure someone was really moving a couch and they hit it. But you don't, as a leasing professional, they don't get a chance to address it. Any of those issues, my favorite was the one I walked in and they gave me the keys. It was 101 degrees outside and it was 87 degrees inside the apartment because the AC didn't work, but they probably hadn't walked it to know that. So that in my mind also set another expectation that this property probably has AC issues. And, is this what's really going to happen? So that experience is different. And when you get some of the keys, guess what? The defined tour path that you probably walked is probably not the way I'm going to take it. Because I'm curious now, right? So I'm going to...
And you have free run of a building.
I'm going to walk around. I'm going to be looking for issues, because we know that's what renters do, right? They look for reasons not to come. And I'm going to have a list. I wanted the garden style home that gave me the keys. Luckily, I was paying attention, but there was a big hole in the ground. And where I was walking on, and so when I was walking through the gravel, and I was just had I stepped over one more, I would have probably rolled my ankle, which would have then been a liability for that property.
Yeah. And it could be, it could be dangerous in that scenario, right? Because you don't know the ins and outs of a property. You don't even know the ins and outs of the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
What if you were touring an apartment all by yourself? I'm going to talk about scenario 3 next, because I think they're very much tied to each other. But what if you were walking a unit, or any prospect was walking a unit, and, hip bumped the stove and turned the range on? There are things that happen, or left a window open. You tested the window, or you tested a slider. There's a real liability concerns, not just to your prospect, but to the physical asset by doing that. And unfortunately, we're seeing, due to centralization, which is a topic for another day, properties going to virtual leasing models, as well as virtual tour, self-guided tours. I don't want to say virtual tours because that's computer-based, but we're seeing a lot of that type of, exposure. You are a professional. You have been in this industry. You know that you're not going to turn on the burner and walk out. But, you know, John and Jane Smith, who are prospects, might go, oh, look how cute this stove is, honey. Look at all. And they're just leaving burners lit. And without a physical person there, it could be a problem. Now, you've told me your New York story before, and that's scenario 3, which unfortunately, I know New York City very well. I know the area. We're not going to, you know, shout out anybody, but I think we can confidently say it was in the center of New York City. There's a lot of apartment buildings in the center of New York City. So talk a little bit about that experience, because it was, if I'm recalling correctly, it was a market rate high-rise environment in the heart of Times Square.
Yep. So, you know, I walked in and there was concierge who I'm assuming was a temp, so they couldn't even figure out how to let me up. Like they had no system. But I was just seeing people coming and going. So had I waited outside the door and followed someone in, which, you know, happens all the time in multifamily. We think that gates also do the same thing as concierge, right? Like people don't tailgate. That doesn't happen at your street.
Right.
So I went up and the leasing professional asked me, oh, you know, here for my tour, here's my ID. And she gave me the list of the 4 apartments that I could go see. And she told me that they were all open, ready for me to view.
In the heart of New York City. I can't stress this enough. This is in the middle of very busy thoroughfare. You know, people are walking in and out. That concierge steps away for a minute.
Subway exit next to the building, like.
And I know New York City, New York State in general has their own set of laws. And, you know, my biggest fear, and I've walked in on squatters, that's inviting the neighborhood to illegally squat in apartments, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
No, I mean, it does. But the sad thing is I see this time after time, like going to sites and helping on site, is that for some reason, we don't think to lock the doors. Like, you know, and so I've walked in on squatters. And actually, you know, we talk about the leasing agent, like who just told me it was unlocked. I had a building out west, I'm not going to say where, but the leasing agent gave someone a key to our penthouse suite on the 32nd floor of this high rise. They took the ice tray and they jumped over the edge. And like, you know,
unfortunately, I've heard similar stories.
And so again, that's a safety issue all in that self. So I think you have to be very mindful, because like in California, they're very renter friendly. And I had a friend who works in student housing, and like a resident purposefully tried to set the apartment on fire. But the investigator came in and said, yeah, but you can't prove the intent. So a judge is not going to take it, right? So you have these people, and people do this all the time. I've seen this time after time. We go tour an apartment. We're looking for an apartment. We really just need a place to live. So we're scoping out the place on this tour, right? So like in New York, I can get in. I know at least 4 apartments that might be open. So let me, you know, try this tonight and see if I can find a place to live for the night in the cold, or, you know, whatever I want to do. So like that scenario is, to me, probably the worst of them all, because you're giving multiple apartments usually. You're not just usually one.
I'm assuming that there was no on-site leasing team, so it was just the concierge.
No, there was. She did not want to escort me up. When we came back down, like we went to her, we came back down. She asked me how the apartments were, and then they showed me around the amenity space, and my best friend was with me, and she literally said, "Why are they paying that person? Because they could have just put up a couple QR codes for the talking points, and like you were like one step away from being a self-guided tour."
You have I could do this for hours and hours, but I want to talk about scenario 3, because it's scenario 2, because we covered 1 and 3. Here's Miss Jane, maintenance technician, and she's going to show you to the apartment. And we're seeing that more and more as we go to online leasing in this industry, as we go to a centralized model for, you know, our office teams. I'm sure you've had some positive experience with maintenance professionals leading tours, but you've probably had some negative ones too. So Why don't we talk about a negative experience? Because I know this has happened to you. Like I said, law of averages. Let's cover both sides, though, because I think it's important. I don't want to just talk about the negative without looking at the positive. So give me an example of a negative experience where a maintenance professional was responsible for the tour taking the place of a leasing professional.
One of my early shops, actually, so not the property that was in Lisa Mode in Charlotte, but a different property in Charlotte, I went and I was told that the leasing professional, the manager, didn't have time to tour me, but the maintenance professional could take me on a tour, right? And essentially, so we're going, and the maintenance professional, shirts untucked, like not the best representation of the company. But when I'm asking things like, what's the rent? Oh, I don't know. You need to talk to the office about that. What utilities are included? I don't know. You need to talk to the office about that. And literally, finally, on the third question, he literally just said to me was, I'm just here to show you how to get to the apartment and let you in. Like, I can't answer any other questions. So I said, oh, so, one thing that I'm really curious about is how quickly do you respond to your work orders?
You change the script. You go on to get the information that you could get with the person that you had.
And literally they told me, oh, we takes about 5 to 7 business days to get a work order done around here. Probably not where I also want to live, right? Because if there's a real issue, it's not going to go. So having that, level buy-in, and you could tell this maintenance person did not want to do this. And you could tell it happened more often than not, because when it was can you take it? It was I guess, I'm not going to
Yeah.
But you're losing that because they're not trained in that area of expertise to talk about rent, to ask you to apply, to answer those types of questions.
I've given my fair share of tours for whatever reason. And it was to, obviously help out, the team. Because I understand leasing professionals, community managers, things come up. There's emergencies. But I had the blessing of being trained. I used to go on tours with my leasing professionals. And it was partially me, but it was partially the people that I was working with said, we want to show you how to do this. I had a desire to learn, and I try to instill that in, my maintenance professionals that I've worked with ever since. But that being said, I had the benefit that maybe not everybody has.
Yeah.
But I hope, Ronald, you have a story of a maintenance professional coming through and, like I just said in my example, do you have, please, I'm holding out a little bit of hope here.
I had a guy like you who, when I was on site, I would travel around and I had a brand new lease up in the North Lake area of Charlotte, and a young maintenance supervisor, only one, right? So we were still getting units, buildings. So he didn't have a lot of stuff to do, right? Because we don't have a lot of residents, and you know how it is when
nothing's breaking yet.
Nothing's breaking. We can't walk a building because we just walked to all of that. He came to me and he said, I'm just kind of putting keys in the key track back here, and you guys are running circles. Can I shadow you on a couple tours? You give me the rundown of here are the questions you have to ask. Here are the 5 questions you have to ask. Here's what you got to do. And, I have a key, so I know where these apartments are. Can I take them? Can I take you to them? And so he shadowed me for a day or two, and then we went on a couple mock tours, and I shadowed him because there wasn't a lot for him to do. And he knew that, hey, I'm going to get commission too. And
so, that's nice.
Because that's who did it, and I said, I'll pay you the commission. I don't it's whoever gets the tour. I don't expect you to go do the paperwork, but you got them to close, which is, at the time more than a lot of people were doing. So he really came through. I was very fortunate when I joined the industry. I worked with an amazing supervisor who, I kind of thought this was the standard, right? Until you go to other companies or other places and you're that's not what you're doing. But, he went on tours. He not only did he go on tours, he did all the move out inspections, and he would be able to talk to the residents, and he would say, I know that, we're looking about $500 worth of damages in this apartment. If you pay $400 or $350 today, you won't have any more damages. We'll eat the cost, because he knew we're going to get the money right now. I'd rather eat $150 or $100 than have to go to collections, have to, maybe, pay the 30-40% and never see the dime. So let me get it now. And, so I just thought that's what maintenance people did. Like, it never crossed my mind that this person was, a one-off, an anomaly. And I was just like, and then I went to my first like property as a manager, and the maintenance professional didn't do any of that. And I was just like, he was special. So like I made him like kind of come in and like kind of teach, because it was within the same company, that mentality of like, this is what we're going to do. And it's all a team. I would tell the team too, like, I mean, I can go change a light bulb, but I'm not good for like much of anything else. So like, if you get behind in work orders, I can't help you.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. And, I know it's a rarity, and it's something that more maintenance professionals, especially as the model is changing in our industry, right? I think it's something that more organizations should be doing. Maintenance professionals should know as much as they can about both sides of the business, right? We have an expectation of community managers and property managers to know maintenance, but we don't necessarily have the same level for our maintenance professionals to know the operations, to know the office side and the leasing side. So I think it's really important to understand, why certain things are in the lease, why we talk about certain things with prospects. And I think that was some good insight. Now, I
also think too, though, Chris, that the thing, like, even if you're not leasing apartments, there are things that you can be doing out on property that can enhance the experience, right? Like,
talk to me about that.
You see your leasing professional driving a golf cart with someone you don't know, wave at the people. It's not that like, how's it going? You see him in the hallway. Hey, like, take a moment to introduce yourself. I think our leasing teams need to do better about incorporating the maintenance into things and talking about, I'm a big person of saying, did you know that we complete 95% of our work orders within 48 hours? Like, giving them those numbers are, hey, we got 10 reviews last week, and out of those 10, 9 of them talked about my maintenance team. Like, really hyping up this maintenance team, because we know that's why people stay. And it's one of those unexpressed like objections, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you where I currently live unless I have really bad experience that, I've had a work order in for 6 weeks because my window can't get fixed or whatever that is. So if you can start building the confidence into your maintenance team, I think it's a great gesture for the maintenance team to realize like, hey, my office staff does care about me. They do promote me on the tour, and they do, make sure that I get the recognition that I deserve.
Maintenance professionals they're very much responsible for renewals. I mean, studies have shown, we've seen it. People are staying usually because they're maintenance staff, because our residents have more exposure to our maintenance team members than they do to the team members in the office. They're seeing the maintenance professionals on the ground. They're seeing them in their hallways. They're seeing them in their units completing repairs. And then probably at events, in the amenity spaces, they're seeing that there's a lot more touch points with maintenance professionals. So I'm glad that you said that, Ronald, because for me, that's really big. I used to walk residents at their move-in day.
Yeah.
I made a point on their move-in day. Once we finally hooked them, and got them to rent and they moved in, I made a point to go introduce myself and in turn ask my teams to do the same thing, to give that welcoming, this is the person who's going to be taking care of your apartment if and when something happens.
I worked in student housing, and move-in day was a production in student housing, right? And so, there was always, the maintenance supervisor was always at the table where people were checking in and picking up their keys, because if there's an issue in the apartment, that's where they're going to come back to. So I want the supervisor there to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. Let me go get one of my guys out here. I'm going to take care of this for you, whatever that is. And I remember my first move-in day, someone said that they didn't have a mattress in their room. And I was like, what do you mean? They wrote a review in the apartment that day, and then came and told me 20 minutes later. So I had already addressed it before I saw the review, and I was just so my maintenance supervisor, let me go look. I walked that unit. I know there's a mattress, but it was a misunderstanding because in student housing, the mattress is firm. And so it does kind of look like a box spring almost, And so in this person's case, they didn't have a mattress. They had a box spring, and we had to say, no, that's the mattress. So, but I needed someone there because all the office staff at that time is handling the logistics of getting people in, getting people out, all that thing. And so that's kind of, I think, we could take those same philosophies at this production day and make every move into production and make sure every person has a touch point with maintenance just so they know who is entering their home.
Well, Ronald, we're almost at the end of our time, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you, we've talked so much about your experiences, but I want you to talk a little bit about your podcast on the Multifamily Media Network, because I think that there's a lot of things that my audience can learn from you, and I'm hoping that your audience could learn from me and my guests. So talk to us a little bit about Rooms with Ronald.
Yeah, so Rooms with Ronald actually came out of that 101 shops. And actually, before it was a podcast, it was a quick monthly LinkedIn video where I had just kind of talked about my experiences that month. And it was a way for me to hold myself accountable, because you've shopped apartments, Chris. Like, after the first 5 or 10, it's kind of like, these are bad. Where's the good going to happen? And then it becomes like you've already said you're new. So I needed to hold myself accountable. So I just started like talking about it, and people just kind of like took to it, right? They're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I can't believe you're seeing this. And how many people did this? And so it just kind of grew into this podcast. And now the nice thing about this podcast is, the listeners don't just get to hear me talk and get on my soapbox and like I actually bring other people on to hear their philosophies on leasing and what they're doing. And I try to make sure that there's on-site people on there, right? Because I think we spend a lot of podcast time, like, a lot of the podcasts are geared towards the CEOs and the COOs and not the boots on the ground. And I want to make sure that those people also have a voice because they're living and breathing it, right? And so we get a lot of up and comers who are like, have you tried it this way? One of the very first episodes I did was with one of my good friends, and we talked about improv and like how you could take improv skills and incorporate it into, your leasing techniques. And I tried to get I've had people on from like Kansas City and San Diego and Denver. One of the episodes releasing in the next couple of weeks, I talked to a prospect who was touring with her boyfriend in Nashville. So I'm talking about what we seen in the Nashville. And she talked about, she saw an apartment that first time she ever saw managed Wi-Fi. And so one apartment had a router, one apartment didn't, right? And so what's this box mean? And so I tried to bring different insights from all different types of people, because leasing to me is an art, and like all art, it's subjective, right? I think you can hit the bullet points, but how you get to the lease is going to vary. So I want to kind of bring those voices together and kind of help and, hear what they're seeing, right? So if their prospects are saying, I love your maintenance team, let's showcase that. Let's get you on a podcast. What are you doing to hype your maintenance team up? What are you doing to, make sure that they're involved in the tour and that people are excited, that they're raving about it?
Thank you so much. And hopefully my listeners, our podcasts actually drop on the same day on the Multifamily Media Network every Thursday. So after you're done listening to this, jump on over on whatever platform you're on, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or any of the Apple podcasts. Give a listen to Ron's show. So I want to close out. Ronald, any insight or any takeaways that you can have about specifically maintenance and what maintenance professionals can really do to support the leasing efforts? And keep, you can be real short and brief, or you can jump on that soapbox that you were talking about. I'm fine either way. But what are some of the words of advice from a leasing professional like yourself that maintenance can do to help our team members on the other side?
Have that open communication, right? So when we come to you and ask you if this apartment's going to be ready, it's not because we're bored and we don't think that you have nothing else to do, right? Usually that means we have a prospects that want to move in. And so I think that communication is so key. And I think we have to get better about over communicating the status of it, right? And so the easy things that come to mind is making sure the make ready dates are correct. A lot of times a prospect will come in and they'll say, I want to go see apartment 111. It says it's available online for a move-in today. And then we have to deliver the bad news that it's not. And this is where leasing professionals then feel obligated to go show these not ready apartment homes. So because there's that trickle down effect, right? So you might think yeah, I need to be at 50% make ready percentage this week. So I'm just going to make this ready. It's not going to affect anything, right? But then you're also scrambling when I lease that apartment. So just having that open dialogue and really, saying, hey, and then maybe take a proactive term. Like I've had maintenance professionals who say, here are the 3 apartments that I've walked, I've inspected. They look good. These are probably apartments you want to go show. So make sure, because then you get their buy-in. So I think like maintenance people should take just as much ownership over, the community and the apartments, just as the leasing people, because again, we're one team. And I feel like we forget that a lot here in multifamily. Like it's always office versus maintenance. It's their fault the apartment's not ready. It's the office fault because we didn't get the keys in time. We have to stop doing the blame game and just figure out, okay, here's the apartments. Here's what we need to get them ready. Let's get these people moved in. Because once we get them moved in, I don't have to turn that apartment for, maybe 12 months, two years, whatever that is. Makes my job easier, makes your job easier, and we're good to go.
That was excellent. Ronald Harrington, thank you for joining me for this episode of Beyond the Work, Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Check out Rooms with Ronald on the Multifamily Media Network. Please like, subscribe, share this podcast and Ronald's. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me for this episode. No matter how long you've been in our industry or what position you have at your company or your community, everyone has a maintenance story to tell. Go to www.multifamilymedianetwork.com and leave me a voice message or share your information and we can tell your tale together on a future episode. Please check out our sponsors and like, subscribe, and follow to this podcast or video, and join the Multifamily Media News Network newsletter for upcoming shows and blogs from me and the other great hosts on our network. Our stories all connect us. See you for the next chapter.